Bruce Peninsula Hospice provides services on the land of the Anishinaabe people, and we honor their long history of living on this land. We are based locally on the traditional territories of those known collectively as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We honor the treaties signed by our ancestors and acknowledge, as treaty people, our collective responsibility to live respectfully on the land. These are the faces of volunteers, the people of Bruce Peninsula Hospice, both past and present. Some of them provide client care, and many others support our programs behind the scenes. Together, they bring commitment, compassion, skills, experience, and organization to those we care for in our community. For more than 25 years, we have been a compassionate presence on the Bruce Peninsula. Our community hospice and bereavement support volunteers come to your home, to your kitchen table, to your bedside. We walk with you, talk with you, we listen, and help you and your loved ones cope with new challenges. For 25 years, we have been privileged to be part of your personal circle of care. We are local people helping local people live their best lives to the very end. This is our story.
My name is Norma Robson, and my native name is Wasnodenogun, which means faraway star. I guess I've always been a caregiver. It's been a pleasure to be with the people of South Bruce Peninsula. I took the course twice, and I found that I wasn't the only one that was in a situation of a loss of a loved one. It's been so positive to be part of hospice, to look at this part of life that's negative in a positive way. It's a real honor to be there for them at such a time in their life where changes are happening. And from the time you hear of any changes in anybody's life, people don't realize it. They start grieving, and to recognize where they're at before they get where they're going. I highly recommend that everybody get their life in order, no matter how old they are, to be ready, because we don't know when tragedy strikes. The dance goes on. We can't stop just because of a situation that happened in our life.
I think hospice contacted me because I had contact with the clientele that they would be servicing. And I was very happy to see an alternative source of support for the population. It has been a source of real satisfaction to me for years.
The word hospice became part of the common vocabulary in the early 90s. A national growing movement called for compassionate and inclusive care for the dying. We actively participated in a vital and ongoing conversation nationwide about the power and significance of family, friends, and community for those facing end of life. Dying requires so much more than medical intervention. Our early Peninsula Hospice pioneers knew that the need for local, personalized care was great, so they gathered their energies and got to work.
It was a very, very useful, I don't know whether that's the right word either, but, there was a lot of caring involved with the work of hospice. And people really did need that.
Particularly in the 80s, when I got hooked on caring for people that were dying, particularly then.
You really found your mission then.
Yeah, I knew that I was doing the right thing. Yeah.
I think there was a lot of excitement about the possibilities of what could be and how we could serve people who were, in a unique situation. And Bruce Peninsula's a unique place to live. There's distance. It's rural. It's not the same as being in an urban center, metro center, or that kind of thing. So you have to sort of think outside of the box a little bit in terms of how you're going to try to serve the needs of people in various situations. I do remember a small meeting around a kitchen table of, I believe, Lynda Hoita's house, where we were talking about this. And of course, as with any project that's embryonic, you're trying to think of, well, how do we get people together? How do we involve people? What do we have to do in terms of setting up this organization?
But when the community started to come together to look to see how we could support patients and clients in their homes, and for me, in the hospital as well, because we were, and even now, we have an elderly population up here. And so often that we would have someone in our little hospital that there was no family around for them to see. And the last thing that I ever want to see is someone dying alone. Pulling it together as a community endeavor and having some hospice services. I mean, I was all for that. I thought that was a great idea. And the fact that our hospital, Wyerton Hospital, Jan Gleason over at the nursing home, because again, there was elderly people over there who often weren't well and who often had no one to sit with them. And again, out in the community, people who were, because there's quite a few distances here, often between places, people were often alone out there. So it was just, it was a great idea to see actually the enthusiasm that came in the early years together. The church, the Anglican church, was a big push behind that. So we had, it was really a community collaborative effort that got that going.
As client care volunteers, we call on our personal courage, compassion, skill, and training. We cross the doorstep and enter the life of a client, not really knowing if it will be for a few days, maybe months, or even years. But as volunteers with Bruce Peninsula Hospice, we can rely on its deep organizational history and strength to guide and support us. That is a deep well of history involving so many and 25 years in the making.
Great Bruce Health Services in the Wyerton site provided our little office and our telephone and computer connection. And we, at first we had limited hours we could use the office. Came to really appreciate the character of all the volunteers.
Our big thing was the client care that I enjoyed the most. And then I got involved with the bereavement group, which I thought was very, very helpful.
We worked together. We got a call that there was a new family that needed help. Either Donna would go, I would go, or we'd go together. And we would talk to the family, ask them what their needs were, how could we help, and we put volunteer support in place. You have an organization that meets standards of practice set by a larger organization, which at that time was the Hospice Association of Ontario.
Before the board, we had what we called the Palliative Care Coordinating Committee. It was like the P4C, and it was like a board. And that's what enabled us to transfer over into a board structure. We had charitable status and we had money. By then we had money. It was a very substantial donation that we received from the Kennedy estate, and that enabled us to begin to do things on a larger scale than we had been able to do before because of money. Because when we started, when you think around the late 90s and 2000s, it was very difficult to talk to people about hospice and get the word out, because people were very much family. The family can look after this, we don't need any help. Our organization learned a great deal by our cooperation with all the other organizations in our area.
We know that we're delivering safe, competent care, and our volunteers are well supported.
Well trained.
They're trained, they feel like they know how to support the families, how to help the clients. And we get really good feedback. We do surveys with the caregivers and we get wonderful feedback. So I think we know that our organization is meeting a need and we're making a difference in the community.
I think for the size of our organization and what we do, the committee structure is really important. And then we moved to get a staff person, and that committee structure really supports that staff person.
Every family has a way of dealing with stress and end-of-life issues, and you learn from that. So it's a learning, it's a growing experience to be a volunteer. So
this organization, I think the VON coined it, but said, do the best work of your life. And for me, this has been the best work of my life. 20 years has been the best work of my life.
During the 15 years, I've been a client care volunteer, coordinator, and chair of the volunteer committee. All of our volunteers come from many facets of life and backgrounds and all the rest of it. So in order to have all of us doing the same thing and working together as a team, we have an education program that is about 30 hours long, and part of it is workshops, part of it is book learning. After you've done that and you're in the field, so to speak, I try to arrange for visitors or speakers to come in and speak at various workshops for the volunteers. We usually meet once a month. We also encourage our volunteers to go to other conferences and workshops out in the community and even further.
At Bruce Peninsula Hospice, we hold all in confidence. Your stories, dreams, hopes, and fears are held dear and close. For 25 years, individuals and their families have given us their trust by inviting us into their special circle of care. Time and experience have taught us a few things about living fully and dying well.
Hi, I'm Jean Sadler, and I've been a hospice volunteer for over 10 years, and I've enjoyed it. I am a retired nurse. One of the things too is building a trust with them, divert their but their focus on their dying and focus on the living that they had left. It hits home in the sense that hopefully you've made a difference. And this, even if you've only sat with the patient for an hour before they died, you know that, or hopefully, you know that the family has appreciated what you're doing when they can't be there. Make it a better journey, even if it's just holding their hand or wiping their brow or just whatever, just knowing that, letting them know that you're present with them.
And before we came up here, our parents were getting old, and so we took the time to be with them. And we also did have a hospice person, which I had no idea what was going on. Yeah. Outside of she came and gave me a break every day. So eventually I figured out that would be something I might like to do. The feeling that you come away with, you're exhausted. I have no idea to this day why. I think it's an emotional drain. So I'm exhausted, but I know I go back the next week, and it's that smile when you walk in the door that's so rewarding. She's so pleased to see you. And I discovered very quickly that all I needed to do was go and listen.
I was a business manager, so what I brought to the table had absolutely nothing to do with looking after people. But I found that I knew how to listen and talk to people, and that helped in getting to know my clients.
I was there to be with the family if needed, and so I've gone into bereavement, and I do a lot of bereavement work, and I find that very similar and very rewarding. Just again, listening. They just want to be heard and acknowledge that they're hurting.
So there are all kinds of things going on in the background, and one of the things that I'm involved in is one of our major fundraising events, Hike for Hospice, So I'm sort of the co-chair on the Hike for Hospice Committee, and we organize that every year, and find that we do a pretty successful job in raising a few dollars for the organization.
It gives me a good feeling. It's good for me, and I would recommend anybody to be a volunteer with whatever interests you, and it enriches your life a whole lot. So many people have said to us that they don't know what they would have done if it hadn't been for us, so they appreciate what we do.
During my time as a volunteer coordinator for the Bruce Peninsula Hospice, one of our duties was to go in and meet the family and the client for the first time. And especially if they were in the early part of their journey, this was one of my favorite parts of my job. You got to ask them to tell you a story, and that to me is just amazing to hear what they have to say. And I always told them, like, we're not here for medical reasons. We're here for you, the person. So tell me about yourself. I might ask them where they grew up or how they met their spouse or something like that. And the neat part about it is sometimes their family's there with them and they'll say, Mom, Dad, we didn't know that. Like, tell us more. So it engages conversation within the family as well. And because of our confidentiality policy, we always tell them that, and they know that they can tell us anything. And when the volunteer gets in there, this leads to trust.
Hi, I'm Gail, and I've been doing grief support now for 3.5 years. I'm now the one-to-one bereavement coordinator, and I also am part of the bereavement committee, and I co-facilitate the bereavement groups. We help people through 2 different ways. We do the one-to-one, which is usually for people who have just recently lost someone. It's a really lonely journey. Having lost 2 husbands, I know exactly what it's like, and you feel very alone. And when you reach out to people and they haven't experienced a profound loss, they don't understand. And I think what works for the support that we give is that we do understand. So we can offer a safe space in confidence where people can talk, they can let out their feelings, they can say whatever they want. It doesn't go any further than us. And we can offer strategies that we use. People really do find that when they realize that somebody else has experienced the pain that they're going through, it helps ease their discomfort. And as we go through the weeks, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing to see the difference in everybody who joined. I can speak for myself, and I know of all the wonderful, compassionate, kind volunteers that do this work with me, that we are honored and we are humbled to be on that journey with them.
How do you think a bereavement support in the community benefits us as a community?
I think it's great because then you feel free to talk to other people who have lost somebody in their family or friends, and you have some background to say, well, yes, it's going to be okay. We all grieve differently. It's a good way of starting a conversation with someone who has lost someone.
I was married for 41 years before my wife passed away with Huntington's. After 25 years of marriage, and so for the next 14 years, I took the role as a caregiver. And probably 12 years into that, if I made it, I learned about hospice volunteers. Having hospice volunteers come into my home was quite different. They weren't there to give her pills. They weren't there to wash her. They were there for her, just to sit and talk to her and get to know Marie and her interests and what made her happy. And this was so refreshing for me. When my wife became very, very ill, our social life was pretty much over. We didn't have our friends coming to visit anymore, and family. I didn't have that kind of support. I think they just found it too hard to see this beautiful lady deteriorate. And so I did feel quite alone in my mission outside of the medical community until the hospice volunteers came into our life and changed my world. And I'd be so forever grateful that service is there for our community. And it inspired me to become a hospice volunteer myself, to serve my community and say, to thank you. But it's so rewarding to make a difference in somebody's life, like hospice volunteers did in my life. And I'll just be very grateful.
Over the years, we have developed meaningful relationships in our community. These relationships have taught us what it means to serve, and as a result, we have expanded our understanding and deepened our capacity. We are strengthened by local collaborations and connections, and we are thankful for the ongoing support of our community.
I'm Pat Cavan. I'm the chair of Bruce Peninsula Hospice Board of Directors, and I first joined hospice back in 2012, I think it was. Part of what attracts me to hospice is the respect it has within our community, the way people know it, the way they appreciate. I guess I would say hospice is one of those organizations where we dearly hope we never need the service, but boy, when we need it, we're glad it's there. My view of hospice was extremely narrow. I thought hospice was something that lasted for 2-3 days, maybe a week, towards the end of someone's life, and it was someone who came into the home to give the caregivers a break. I had no idea that Bruce Peninsula Hospice provided bereavement services and that client care could go on for indeed months or years. So that was a learning curve for me. One of the huge advantages of having a local hospice is the ability to respond to local needs. Up and Away would be a perfect example of that.
Hi, my name is Laura Baring. I'm one of the managers at Bruce Peninsula Association for Community Living. We are very grateful for Bruce Peninsula Hospice for developing a resource material, Up and Away, and training their volunteers to support people who have a developmental disability through their grieving process. Our collaboration helped multiple people in our community in the hardest time of their lives. Thank you again, and we are grateful.
Bruce Peninsula Hospice was very excited to produce Stepping Stones, a personal conversation planning guide. We produced this guide to be approachable and easy to use so that members of the community and our clients could take part in those important and meaningful conversations.
Berdina Johnson, and my native name is Beneshikwe, which means Lady Bird.
Berdina, we had conversations even before we wrote this.
Yes.
About some of the things you had thought about.
Yeah.
And it was your thinking through that helped us write that.
Yeah, exactly. And I knew what I wanted to have. It was easy for me because I was in that situation and we had just gone over this, the topics of this stepping stones. And it was easy for me. But it's not easy for everybody. Everybody is different, and some people have a lot of fear and anxiety. And I had a lot of support at the hospital. I took a course in bereavement because I had no idea what I was getting into, and I thought, well, at least I should know what is going on. And I quite enjoyed that, and it really helped me. First of all, you have to think about your family, I think, to make it easier for them, and always include them in the topics that you're concerned about. I think it's important that the wishes of the people who are leaving this world, and also to develop good relationships from the very onset, and also to have confidence in yourself and trust the people who are looking after you.
The other thing that's amazing about the Bruce Peninsula Hospice, it also has a board of directors who oversees the operation, sets strategic planning, It's a really well organized operation in that people there have a structure, they have a process, and there's good training for people to learn about how to be a volunteer and help a person going through that loss. One of the challenges, I think, though, an organization like the Bruce Peninsula Hospice faces is funding. Community Foundation Grey Bruce, which I've been involved in as past chair, is always delighted to be able to help and support and fund the organization. But I think it's something that people, even in their own will or in their own giving strategy, may want to think about. At some point, I may well need those services, but even before that, let me pay forward someone else who could use those services and make a contribution. So I do think as people watch this video and volunteer time, that's important, that's critical. But also if they can volunteer financial resources, that's also imperative.
At Bruce Peninsula Hospice, we continue to challenge ourselves, our clients, and our community to live well, to be strong and heartful in the uncertainty of new health realities, and to support quality of care for life. How does it feel knowing that Bruce Peninsula Hospice has served more than 1,000 people and their families?
Well, I feel very grateful that I could be part of it, that I was, part of the movement and actually doing the caring. It was, I'm sort of glad I was involved in that.
The leaves of the colchicum grow about a foot high in spring and then die back. Then in early fall, 1 or 2 stalks sprout, producing a single white to purplish pink flower that resembles a crocus. It is an absolute delight to see in the autumn landscape. This intriguing flower has become a symbol of the hospice movement. Its beauty in fall is a reminder of the beauty of life in the season of endings. We strive to hold on to the beauty of life by providing care and support for the dying, for their families, and for the bereaved. When we see the colchicum flowering in autumn, we marvel at its softness and strength, moved by the preciousness of all living things.